The captive princess. The chamber was silent except for the low hum of chains. They glowed faintly, like living things wrapped around the wrists and ankles of the alien princess. She sat on the cold metal floor, her back against the wall, her silver eyes staring at nothing. The walls around her were dark and smooth, built to keep sound from escaping, built to keep hope away. For days, maybe weeks, time had blurred together. She had been left alone, fed only when the guards remembered, spoken to only when they wanted to break her spirit. She had been a princess once, loved by her people, carried in processions, honored with songs. Now she was nothing but a prisoner. Her crime was simple. She had refused the cruel fate planned for her. They wanted to use her bloodline, her body, for an ancient ritual of breeding, one that would give power to the rulers. She had said no, and for that they had chained her deep beneath the fortress. The air smelled of iron and ash. Somewhere beyond the thick doors, footsteps echoed faintly, alien guards patrolling, their heavy boots clicking against the stone corridors. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, telling herself she would not cry. She would not let them see weakness. But inside, fear coiled tighter with every passing hour. Her fingers brushed the chains. They pulsed faintly, as if mocking her, draining her strength. Every time she tried to pull against them, they burned her skin. She whispered softly in her own tongue, prayers to the stars, to her ancestors. But the stars were silent here. A memory came unbidden. She was small, sitting on her father's lap, watching the sky ships launch from their city. He had told her once, "Our chains are only real if we believe in them." Back then she had laughed, too young to understand. Now the words felt like a ghost inside her chest. The door groaned. She stiffened, her heart pounding. The guards rarely came at this hour. The sound of grinding metal filled the chamber as the lock twisted. She waited, tense, expecting the same sneering faces, the same cold voices. But the figure that stepped inside was different. Taller, broader, wrapped in a battered suit of armor that looked nothing like her people's. The mask was cracked, scratched from battles she could not imagine. The figure moved carefully, as if unsure of where he was. The princess blinked. This was no guard. This was no executioner. This was something else. The figure looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, she felt eyes that did not see her as property. The helmet tilted, the breathing inside uneven, almost human. The princess opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. Her throat was dry, words heavy like stone. Finally, in the common tongue, she managed, "Who are you?" The figure didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer, boots echoing on the floor, gaze fixed on the glowing chains around her wrists. His voice was low, rough but strangely steady when he finally spoke. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. Her chest tightened. The way he spoke, the shape of his words, it was foreign, yet strangely clear. He was not of her kind, not of this empire. Something about him felt wrong, out of place, but in a way that filled her with a strange flicker of hope. "You are human," she whispered, almost not believing it herself. The figure said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Her eyes widened. She had heard stories in secret chambers, rumors told in hushed voices, of a race beyond the stars, stubborn, untamed, dangerous, a race that did not kneel, a race that broke chains. The human crouched beside her, examining the living metal that bound her. He didn't flinch when the chains hissed and pulsed. He touched them lightly with his gloved fingers. Sparks jumped, as the princess gasped, expecting him to recoil. But instead he pressed harder, studying, testing. For the first time since her capture, the chain cracked. A faint line, thin as a hair, spread across the glowing surface. Her breath caught. She stared at him, at the impossible thing he had just done with a single touch. No alien of her world had ever made these chains bend. They were unbreakable, forged to last forever. Yet here, a stranger, a human, had made them shiver. Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, to ask for freedom, to beg, but pride held her tongue. She was still a princess, even in rags and chains. She straightened her back, forcing calm into her voice. "If you break them," she said slowly, "they will come for us both." The human finally looked into her eyes. Behind the scratched mask, she could not see his full face, but his gaze was steady, unshaken. "Let them come," he said. And in that moment, for the first time in endless nights of fear, the alien princess felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The human stranger. The hum of the chains still echoed through the chamber, but the princess could not take her eyes off the human. He stood there, silent, studying the strange glowing metal, as though it were nothing more than an obstacle, not a curse forged by her people's most feared engineers. For the first time in her life, she felt that the unbreakable was not so eternal after all. The human rose slowly, scanning the chamber with sharp, cautious movements. His armor was battered, scarred by battles far beyond her imagination. Burn marks striped the chest plate, dents covered the arms, and faint red lights blinked on the edges of his mask. He looked like a warrior who had fought 100 wars and survived them all. The princess forced her voice to steady. "Why are you here? How did you find me?" The human's gaze turned back to her, and though his eyes were partly hidden behind the cracked visor, she could feel the weight of them. His words came quiet but firm. "I wasn't looking for you. I was looking for a way out." Her heart twisted. So it was chance. This man, this stranger, had not come for her. Yet something in his voice carried more than survival. It carried defiance, like fire under cold ashes. He stepped closer. The chains hissed as if alive, tightening around her wrists, sensing danger. The princess clenched her jaw as pain jolted through her arms. The human did not back away. Instead, he placed his hand against the chain once more. Sparks leapt, the metal shuddered, and another faint crack appeared. Her breath caught. 2 cracks now. Something impossible was becoming real. The ground shook suddenly, and a low alarm began to hum through the walls. Red light bled across the ceiling, harsh and merciless. The human tilted his head, his expression unreadable beneath the mask. "They know," she whispered, fear tightening her voice. "The chains are alive. They told the guards you are here." Heavy footsteps thundered beyond the door. The human turned sharply, drawing a blade from his side. It was simple, sharp steel, primitive compared to the glowing energy weapons her people wielded, but he held it with a confidence that sent shivers down her spine. The door slammed open. 2 alien guards rushed in, their tall frames armored in dark plates, weapons sparking with deadly light. The human moved like a shadow. Before the first guard could even raise his weapon, the human's blade slashed across his chest, the strike so precise and fierce that the alien collapsed without a cry. The second fired, bolts of energy filling the chamber with violent flashes. The princess gasped, expecting the human to fall. But he didn't. He darted forward with a speed that was terrifying, weaving between the blasts. His blade sank deep into the guard's chest, and the alien staggered before falling still. The chamber reeked of smoke and burnt flesh. The human wiped the blade on his armor, his breathing steady. He had faced death and looked at it without fear. The princess could only stare. She had seen warriors fight before, but never like this. Never with such raw defiance. Her people's soldiers trained for years, dependent on energy weapons and technology. But this man fought with instinct, with sheer will. He was dangerous. The human walked back to her. Without a word, he gripped the chains once more. His strength pressed against the glowing metal, his jaw clenched, and with a sharp crack, one of the shackles broke. The princess gasped as her right wrist came free, the chain falling lifeless to the floor. For the first time in weeks, blood rushed warm and fast through her arm. She trembled, staring at the broken shackle in disbelief. You broke it," she whispered. The human gave a short nod. Not enough. We need you free. He pulled against the second shackle. The walls shook again, this time from more than alarms. A chorus of boots thundered outside, dozens of guards rushing down the corridors. "They are coming," she said urgently, panic surging. "You cannot fight them all. No one can." The human's eyes met hers again. There was no arrogance, no false pride, only a quiet certainty. "I've fought worse," he said. And with a final roar of effort, the second shackle snapped. The energy backlash lit the room in a burst of light, and the fortress itself seemed to scream. The alarms grew louder, the sound like 1,000 voices in rage. The princess stumbled forward, weak but free. The human caught her, steadying her on her feet. His grip was strong, unshaking. For a fleeting moment, she looked at him not as a stranger, not as an intruder, but as something more. He had given her back freedom with his own hands, but there was no time. The hallway beyond was alive with rushing soldiers. She could hear their voices now. Shouts, orders, weapons charging. The human guided her toward the shadows of the corridor, every step deliberate, every move planned as if he had done this 100 times before. The princess whispered, her voice low and trembling. "Why do you help me? You don't even know who I am." The human's reply was quiet, but it cut through the chaos like a blade. "Because no one deserves chains." The words sank deep, more powerful than any weapon. The corridor filled with enemy soldiers. The human pushed her behind him, raising his blade once more. His stance was unyielding, his figure solid against the tide. The princess's chest pounded with fear and awe. He was only one man, only one human. And yet, the guards hesitated. They stared at him as if something in his defiance, in his raw presence, was more terrifying than the weapons in their hands. The princess realized something chilling and powerful in that moment. This human was not just a stranger. He was a storm that her people did not understand, a force that could not be measured by numbers or chains. And he had come for her. The chase begins. The corridor thundered with boots, the echo bouncing off the steel walls. The alien princess pressed against the cold stone, her heart hammering, as the human stood before her like an unmovable wall. His blade dripped with the dark blood of the guards he had already slain, his armor scarred, yet his stance unbroken. Dozens of alien soldiers poured into the passage, their weapons glowing with pulsing light. Their voices shouted orders, their eyes fixed on the impossible sight, a prisoner freed, standing beside an outsider. The princess whispered urgently, "There are too many. We must run." The human didn't move at first. His gaze swept over the soldiers, measuring them. For a breathless moment she thought he would fight them all, but then he gave a single nod. "Stay close." He seized her wrist, guiding her into the shadows as the soldiers charged. Energy bolts seared past, scorching walls, shattering stone. The human pushed her down a side tunnel, his movements sharp and precise, like he had mapped every step in his mind. The fortress groaned as alarms wailed louder, crimson lights washing over every corridor. The princess stumbled, still weak from her time in chains. The human caught her before she fell, his grip strong but gentle, then pulled her forward. Behind them, voices rose, the guards in pursuit. "They will not stop," she gasped. "They will hunt until we are dead." "Then let them," the human replied, his tone steady, calm in a way that sent shivers down her spine. They turned a sharp corner, sprinting through a tunnel that sloped downward. The walls narrowed, dripping with condensation, as though the fortress itself was alive and sweating. Ahead, the sound of rushing water echoed faintly. The human slowed, scanning the shadows. His instincts were sharp. Every flicker of light, every distant footstep, seemed to reach him before it reached her. He pushed her behind a fallen slab of stone, just as a squad of guards rushed past the junction, weapons raised, missing them by inches. The princess held her breath, her body pressed close against his. The silence between heartbeats felt like eternity. When the guards vanished, the human pulled her out again, moving swiftly toward the faint sound of water. At last they reached a vast chamber. A river of black water surged through, cutting the room in half. The only way forward was a narrow bridge of rusted steel, trembling with every vibration. The princess froze. "It's unstable. If we fall—" The human didn't let her finish. He stepped onto the bridge first, testing its weight. The steel groaned but held. He looked back, his voice steady. "Trust me." Her throat tightened. For years she had trusted no one, not even her own people. Yet now, chained to this moment, she found herself obeying. She stepped onto the bridge. Halfway across, the alarm shifted, louder, sharper. Doors above them opened, and squads of soldiers poured into balconies around the chamber. Energy bolts rained down, searing the air. The princess cried out as the bridge shuddered under the blasts. She stumbled, but the human caught her hand, pulling her upright. His blade flashed, deflecting a bolt that would have torn through her chest. "Run!" he commanded. They sprinted, the bridge swaying violently under their feet. Bolts scorched the steel, chunks falling into the black waters below. The roar of pursuit grew louder, soldiers flooding both ends of the chamber, their voices filled with fury. The human pushed her forward, his own body shielding hers as blasts seared past. At the last moment he hurled his blade with brutal force. The steel weapon spun through the air, slamming into the control panel above. Sparks exploded, the lights flickered, and the bridge's locking bolts released with a metallic scream. The bridge collapsed. The human grabbed the princess, pulling her with him as the steel gave way beneath their feet. They plunged into the black water, swallowed by the rushing current. The cold was shocking, burning through her skin. The current dragged them down, swirling violently. For a terrifying instant, she thought the river would tear her from his grasp. But his arm locked around her, unyielding, dragging her upward through the chaos. They broke the surface together, gasping for air as the current swept them through a tunnel. The sound of the fortress faded behind them, replaced by the roar of water crashing against rocks. The princess coughed, clinging to him as they were carried forward. The tunnel opened suddenly, and they were hurled into the open air, plunging down a waterfall that roared like thunder. They hit the pool below with bone-shaking force. For a moment, everything was water and pain and darkness. Then she felt herself lifted, pulled to the shore. The human dragged her onto the rocks, his breath heavy, his armor dripping. The princess collapsed beside him, her body trembling. For the first time, the sky stretched above her, open, endless, dotted with distant stars. She had almost forgotten what freedom looked like. But there was no peace yet. From the fortress above, lights flared, ships rose into the night, their engines roaring as they fanned out across the sky. The hunt was not over. The human stood slowly, his blade now gone, but his stance as unbroken as before. He looked up at the ships, and then down at her. "We keep moving," he said. The princess pushed herself up, her silver eyes shining in the starlight. She wanted to ask again why he fought for her, why he risked everything, but deep down, she already knew. Because humans never bowed, humans never surrendered, and tonight, neither would she. Secrets of humanity. The forest was dark, alive with strange whispers of night creatures. Every step the human and the alien princess took crunched softly against the wet ground. The waterfall's roar had faded behind them, but above the canopy, the sky still glowed with the engines of ships searching. Beams of light swept across the trees, hunting for them. The princess moved carefully, her body weak from captivity, her mind still shaken from the escape. Yet every time she stumbled, the human steadied her without hesitation. He carried no weapon now, only broken armor, a relentless spirit, and eyes that seemed to see paths invisible to her. She wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the forest was alive with danger, so she waited, watching him. Even in silence, the human was different. Calm where others would have panicked, steady where others would have fallen apart. Finally, when they paused near a ruined stone arch half buried in vines, she spoke. "You should have left me," she whispered. You could have escaped alone. Now they will kill you because of me." The human looked at her. His face was half hidden behind the cracked visor, but his voice carried clearly. "They will try, but I've seen worse than death." Her silver eyes narrowed. "You don't even know who I am." "I don't need to." His words were sharp without hesitation. "You were in chains. That was enough." Her breath caught. The simplicity of his answer was heavier than any speech she had ever heard. She had lived her life among rulers who spoke endlessly of honor, power, and destiny. Yet here was a man who needed none of those words. Chains were wrong, so he broke them. But she pressed on, needing more. "Why are humans different? Why do you fight so hard, even when the odds are impossible?" For the first time he was silent. He sat on the broken stones, looking toward the beams of light above the forest. His voice came low, almost as if speaking to himself. "Because we were born in chains once, long ago. My people, we were ruled, broken, used. But we learned something. Chains don't hold forever if you refuse to bow." The princess froze. His words rang with something more than pride. Pain, memory, defiance, written into his very blood. She knelt beside him, whispering, "So that is your secret. Not strength, not weapons, but memory." Before he could reply, the night tore apart with sound. A hunting drone screeched overhead, its searchlight piercing the forest canopy. The beam swept across them, bathing the ruins in merciless light. The human pulled her down just as plasma fire ripped through the stones, exploding in a storm of heat and smoke. "Run!" he barked. They sprinted through the forest as explosions followed, trees splintering under the blasts. The princess's lungs burned, her legs weak, but the human never slowed. He moved like a predator born for survival, weaving through trees, dragging her when she faltered. The drone swooped lower, its metal claws tearing through branches. A shriek of engines filled the air as soldiers descended on anti-gravity platforms, their weapons glowing with deadly fire. The human dragged the princess behind a massive fallen log. Plasma fire scorched the wood, sending sparks across the ground. He ripped a broken shard of metal from the log's surface, holding it like a blade. Primitive, fragile, but his grip was unyielding. The soldiers landed around them, armored shadows in the night. One shouted, "Surrender the prisoner, outsider! You will not survive!" The princess's heart sank. Surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. It was over. But the human stood, rising tall in the flickering light. His armor was cracked, his weapon nothing more than scrap, yet his voice carried like thunder. "Then come take her." The soldiers hesitated. Something in his tone froze them, as if the night itself had listened. The princess felt it too, that strange, unshakable force that was not power, not technology, but something deeper. The soldiers finally rushed forward. The human met them head-on, moving with savage precision. He struck one across the throat, seized another by the arm, and hurled him into the dirt. Plasma fire lit the night, but he moved like a shadow, too fast, too stubborn to fall. The princess watched, torn between fear and awe. He was only one man, yet he fought as though the universe itself had chosen him. But even storms break. A soldier's strike hit his side, burning through armor. He staggered, pain flashing across his face. "No!" the princess cried out, stepping forward without thinking. Her voice shook the trees, her fear turning to fury. Something strange happened then. The chains she once wore, the chains that had drained her power, left behind a faint mark in her blood. Now, in the heat of her desperation, that mark flared. A pulse of silver light surged from her skin, knocking the nearest soldiers back. The forest shook with the force. The human looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. She trembled, staring at her hands. For the first time she felt power again, power not stolen, not bound, but hers. The soldiers reeled, fear flashing across their faces. The human seized the moment, finishing the fight with brutal strikes until the survivors fled into the night. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. The princess fell to her knees, breathing hard. The human crouched beside her, steadying her with a hand on her shoulder. "You see," he said softly, "you are not broken." Her eyes filled with tears, not of weakness, but of something stronger. For years she had been told she was powerless without chains, that her life was not her own. But tonight, standing beside a human, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt free. Above them the ship still roared, the hunt far from over. But now, for the first time, the princess did not fear the night. Because she was not alone. Breaking the chains, the night sky was no longer quiet. Warships circled above the forest, their beams of light cutting through the trees like knives. Drones screamed overhead, searching with mechanical fury. The fortress wanted its prisoner back, and it would burn the world to find her. The princess stood at the edge of a ruined clearing, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Her body trembled from exhaustion, yet inside her burned a fire she had never felt before. Behind her stood the human, scarred, bloodied, his armor cracked in half, but still standing like an unbreakable wall. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They will hunt us until there is nowhere left to run." The human's voice was calm, almost steady enough to silence the chaos around them. "Then we don't run. We end it here." Her breath caught. End it? Against ships, drones, soldiers, an entire empire? The idea was madness. Yet when she looked at him, she saw no fear, only defiance. The roar of engines grew louder. A massive dropship descended into the clearing, shaking the ground. Soldiers poured out in waves, weapons glowing with deadly energy. At their center stood a towering figure draped in obsidian armor, the mark of a high commander. His voice boomed across the clearing. "Princess, you belong to us, and you, human. Your interference ends tonight." The princess felt her heart sink. The commander carried a staff pulsing with the same energy as the chains that once bound her. Even now she could feel its pull, a whisper of the prison that had drained her. The human stepped forward, placing himself between her and the commander. He had no blade left, only broken metal strapped to his arm, yet his presence was more solid than steel. "You want her?" His voice carried like thunder. "Then face me." The commander laughed, a sound that shook the ground. Soldiers surrounded them, tightening the circle. The princess reached for the human's arm, whispering desperately, "You cannot fight them all." He turned to her, his eyes burning with something deeper than rage, something like promise. "I don't need to fight them all, just enough." The battle exploded. The first wave of soldiers charged. The human met them head-on, moving with brutal precision. His broken arm guard blocked a strike, his fist shattered a visor, his body a storm of raw strength and stubborn will. Plasma bolts lit the clearing, but he twisted through them, each movement sharp and fearless. The princess could not stand still. She felt the silver light still pulsing inside her, the mark left behind by her. Broken chains. She raised her hands, and the forest itself seemed to answer. Roots tore through the ground, wrapping around enemy soldiers, dragging them screaming into the earth. The human and the princess fought as one, he with his defiance, she with her reborn power. But the commander was not idle. With a roar, he slammed his staff into the ground. The chains that had once bound her sprang to life, crawling across the dirt like serpents of fire. They lashed toward her, wrapping around her ankles, burning with their old poison. The princess cried out, stumbling. The chains tightened, pulling her down. Fear surged through her chest. Fear of being taken again, of being bound forever. But before the chains could consume her, the human seized them with his bare hands. His skin burned, smoke rising as the energy seared through him. Yet he did not let go. The commander sneered. "Foolish creature, those chains are unbreakable." The human's teeth clenched, his muscles straining. His voice came like a growl. "Nothing is unbreakable." With a roar that shook the clearing, he pulled. The chains cracked, splintered, and shattered into fragments of glowing dust. The backlash surged like a storm, throwing soldiers and drones into the air. The commander staggered, his staff trembling as the energy recoiled. The princess stared, her breath caught in awe. He had done it again. He had broken what her people believed eternal. The commander roared in fury, charging with his staff raised high. The human met him in the center of the clearing, their clash sending shockwaves through the ground. Sparks flew as steel met energy, the air screaming with the force of their struggle. The princess felt her strength return in full. She raised her hands, silver light blazing from her palms. With a cry, she unleashed it, striking the commander with a beam of pure force. The blast hurled him backward, shattering his armor, tearing the staff from his grasp. The chains dissolved into dust, their power broken forever. Silence fell. The soldiers froze, their weapons lowered, their will shattered without their leader. One by one they backed away, retreating into the trees, the fortress above calling them home. The clearing was still. Smoke curled into the night sky, the stars bright and unbroken above. The human stood at the center, his body battered, his hands burned, but his spirit unbowed. The princess walked to him slowly, her chains gone, her freedom real. She looked into his eyes, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "You broke more than chains tonight," she whispered. "You broke their fear." He gave a faint nod, his voice quiet but steady. "No chains hold forever, not if we fight." For the first time in her life, the princess smiled, not as royalty, not as a prisoner, but as someone free. She dropped to one knee, bowing her head not in defeat, but in respect. "Human," she said, her voice trembling with something deeper than gratitude, "you are more than legend." And above them, the night carried her words to the stars.